Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for the Friday SLO talk on October 6, 2023. This is number 3 of the talks for the fall 2023 semester. My name is Jarek. I'm the founder of the Friday SLO talks. I'm joined by coaches from the California community colleges and other institutions. I see that Michelle is joining us, so good morning, everyone. I'll let coaches introduce themselves in just a minute. Just a couple of logistics. If you could please make sure that you introduce yourself in the chat, just so that we know who you are. It's always good to hear and see people from other places. Thank you very much. This morning, yes, thank you. So as far as the logistics, the slides and the recording of the presentation are going to be available right afterwards. I send them out by Sunday night. I work on them over the weekend, and by Sunday everybody should have all the information. Well, today we have a very distinguished guest joining us, Dr. Natasha Jankowski, who is a guru of assessment of student learning. She's been doing this work for quite a while, so we are welcoming her again to our group. If we could perhaps move on to our coaches' introductions, would be great. Enrique, you're on top of my screen. If you could please introduce yourself. Welcome, everyone. Looking forward to a great discussion. Enrique.
Thank you, Jarek. My name is Enrique Jauregui. I am the SLO coordinator for Fresno City College, right in the Central Valley of California. So welcome.
Thank you. And Amanda, you're next.
Yep, I am Amanda Teinter. I'm the faculty coordinator of instructional design and outcomes at Reedley College, a sister school to Enrique.
All right. Good morning. And Michelle Dunbar from Southern California as well.
Hi, yes, I'm at Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. I'm the integrated assessment and accreditation specialist. Thank you.
Good morning. And thank you very much again for joining us. Well, Dr. Natasha Jankowski is here with us to share her insights on assessment of student learning and the impact of artificial intelligence. I tell you, these days, it seems like any topic, as long as it's coupled with artificial intelligence, attracts quite a bit of attention. So we are just very, very lucky, very happy to have Dr. Jankowski join us this morning. I do have your slides. If you like, I can change them for you, Natasha. If you want, you can control them yourself. It's either way is fine with us. You're welcome to share your screen. And good morning. Let's get started.
All right. Thank you. I am happy to go ahead and do that. And it is so nice to see everyone and see names popping up. I'm like, oh my goodness, hello. So delighted to have you with us and have this conversation. Please do continue to say hi in the chat, who you are, what's your role, where you're from. It is very nice to see everyone on this October day to talk about assessment and generative AI. And I want to do things a little bit differently. And I want to explain why that may be the case and how we're going to have this conversation and talk about it. But before that, let me tell you a little bit more about myself. I don't want to assume that you all know me and the lens that I'm going to bring to this conversation. Let me also throw into the chat. I'm going to move your chat over here. Copy of the slides. I know there were questions about it, and there are links to everything I'm going to talk about in the slide notes. So please feel free to go in and click. And one of the first links is on this page. It's important to know that I am a fast talker. The picture of the Micro Machine Man is a commercial from the 80s. If you were like, what is the Micro Machine commercials from the 80s? There is a link in the notes to a YouTube video of it. I am not that fast of a talker, but it does happen from time to time. So I do think that's an important caveat. This is recorded. We can't slow it down, but I will have everything that I'm mentioning is in the slides. All the material that you need is there. And a couple other things that are important to know sort of about the lens that I bring to this work is my background really came in philosophy. And so one of the things that I like to try to do in this space is ask questions around our purpose, trouble a bit of our foundations by asking some, what are we really talking about in different spaces there? And I want to do a little bit about that today, but couple that immediately with practice and research. So what is happening on the ground? What are people doing? What do we know, if anything, from sort of our research base? And strongly keeping students at the center of all of that work and being an active participant in it. So you'll see those threads come through it. I will pull a little bit from the work that we did at the National Institute for Learning Outcomes Assessment, or NALOA. So if you see that come in, there's that. And I will have some humor, whether it's hit or miss, that is up to you. They are a bit dad joke in approach, and that's all right. And you may also get to hear my girls, my dogs, Izzy and Daisy, who are both majestic. One is very grumpy about all things assessment, and the other is very interested in all things assessment. So, you know, kind of like the mix we get in our own institutions, I suppose. And I also do teach with New England faculty at New England College. So hi, Gavin, it's nice to see you here. So that's a little bit about me and what I will be doing as you go along. But you might be wondering, what are we going to talk about today? And I'll tell you, when I started putting this together, and because it's generative AI, I was like, you know what, let's use the AI and see what the prompts might be related to things that such a topic like this would include. And while they were nice and it was helpful, it's not going to end up being what we talked about, but I wanted to share with you. And I did about, I don't know, 4 or 5 different prompts. I couldn't, you know, you got to ask it in the right kind of way to get things to that lens, but I've synthesized them into these 2 figures on I feel like you can't talk about AI without using AI. And when we're thinking about generative AI and its impact on assessment, some of it was like, it's going to be so helpful to improve efficiency in teaching with scoring and feedback and adaptive testing and learning, and can create assessments and find cheating and all of these nice things. And pretty similar in the later prompts, they were like, this can make it more systematized because it will remove the bias in grading. I'm interested to see how that will happen. Provide data-driven insights and all of these pieces. And then issues, we got to watch out for bias and trust, if students will accept it, the amount of training needed to do and engage with it, what this impacts for teacher-student interactions, ethical concerns around it, privacy concerns, which are huge. So that was nice, and that was all well and good. But we're going to talk about 3 buckets of things in our time together today. And that is what is happening in the national and international landscape of conversations around generative AI and assessment. So what are we looking at? What are resources? What are open right now for comment? And there are quite a few that are like draft statements, draft principle papers, where it is comment and feedback and provide your thoughts on it. And I encourage you all to be a part of this dialogue and ongoing conversation. So please definitely do that. Then I want to talk about, and I kind of want to trouble the current conceptions on assignment design tasks. So most of the conversations around this come from academic integrity and writing assignments. What do we need to do in that space? And I want to kind of mess with that a little bit, dig a little deeper, bring a little lens that's different to thinking about it. And then lastly, a place that I'm not really seeing a lot of conversation that I think is really ripe for dialogue, and I would love to hear from what you're doing, if anything, in this space, is what does this mean for us in our process of actually doing assessment and collecting reports as assessment professionals and analyzing data? What are the possible opportunity spaces or things that we can think about there? And so that's the 3 big buckets. If there are other things that you're like, oh, Natasha, I really need to know about X, Y, and Z, there's a Padlet that you are welcome to engage in asking some questions, voting questions up and down, and all of those pieces. And so please do participate that way. Also, feel free to use the chat and have conversations there. I say that being like, I'm kind of keeping an eye on it, but there are wonderful coaches who are doing this work. And so thank you for your service in advance for that. But please participate in the way that makes sense to you and how to be a part of this dialogue. And if there's something that you really wanted us to chat about today, but it's not falling into my buckets, then we can definitely make process for that. So let's start with the first one. What is happening in our conversation landscape on generative AI assessment? What is going on in here? And I'm going to be sharing a lot of resources, but I invite you to please share any other resources in the chat as we go along. Things are literally being developed daily related to some of these pieces. So if you're like, I really find this to be helpful, share with the community, be a part of that. I'm sure there's ways we can figure out to compile some of these and share them back with the group. She says, maybe giving work to someone else. I apologize, but I do share. Please do share if there's anything that you're looking at. So caveat: I'm going to talk about generative AI. I am an assessment person. I am not a technological guru. This is not my wheelhouse. So I'm going to offer my Cliff Notes version of what is this that we're talking about. Well, it's a type of artificial intelligence that can produce coherent text. It could also do images and audio. So this is where it's like, ooh, in higher ed. It's been around since the 50s, but it wasn't really great in a lot of the kind of functionalities. And it's now really easy to use and widely accepted. This is actually going to become embedded in a variety of tools. Microsoft Office Suite is looking to embed this. LinkedIn, you can actually have AI draft you a LinkedIn post now or write your own. So while we have these pieces that you can go to and do prompts, it will increasingly be embedded in tools at this point. It pulls from large language models. So you're like, how does it do this magical work? It's pulling from a vast collection of sources. This can be things like books, web text, articles, internet forums, and the models are growing larger. In this instance of the Chat GPT that's open, the one you don't have to pay for, it's something like 170 trillion parameters are the things that it's engaging and pulling from. So that's a ton, but it does not have cognition. That is, it cannot think, all right? So instead of like, it's very similar to like autocomplete. I don't know why I do this when I'm typing. It's like when you drive a car and you're in a movie and you do the steering wheel like this, my typing fake is like, you know, when you're writing in the search bar. Oh, I apologize. So when you're typing in the search bar and it pops up, like it wants to auto-complete a sentence that you're doing related to that. It's that same kind of idea that related to the prompt. It's finding and replicating the most common patterns in speech that are available in its data set. So it depends on what it was trained on, what it's pulling from, and what's the most common, sort of most logical next iteration of this. This is what it can do now, but it is constantly improving and evolving. So this will be the worst that it will be. It will only get better as we continue on and through this path. So depending on what it's been trained on, it allows them to write, chat with users by predicting what should come next in the written text. And when given a prompt, it's going to extend it based on what it's been trained on, which means two things. The prompt you put in matters. And two, it depends on what it's been trained on. And it's not always like, oh, I have that. It can produce things that sound confidently true. You're like, this is written in a very authoritative manner, but are not at all. And so in some ways, when you get into it, it's hard to tell which tasks it's good at or bad at. And the user needs to verify our output. So that's your really quick intro to AI. Now, you may be thinking, oh, what it's trained on matters and bias. Do you remember in 2016 when Microsoft released Tay and You on Twitter and it only took a day for it to become racist? Anybody remember that? That happened. That's not that long ago. 2018 was the first iteration of our Chat GPT 1. So training and what's the most widely thing in prompts, very important. But if you want to keep abreast of what's out there, what are all these different tools and developments, then Stanford University, the Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence Steering Committee works that is engaged in partnership with a variety of other organizations, has wonderful tracking of AI progress. They do an index report. It's very helpful to sort of look at different things that are applicable. They have individual chapters if you want to pull out specific pieces of information. So that's a good resource to go to. If you want to see sort of what are all these tools, I like how the Reach Capital has grouped things into different categories related to what they do. And so if you want to see, and it's specific to ed pieces, so ed technology related pieces. So if you want to see kind of what falls in that from the generative AI, that's a great go-to resource that's compiling and organizing, and they update it regularly. So as new tools come out, because you can actually use AI to create an AI. It's like, oh, it's meta. That's Inception. I'm not sure which one that is, but it's something of interest, I think. So they keep that updated. That's a great place to go to if you want to see what's out there. And we've been using it in higher ed in all kinds of different ways. This is not new to us in our institutions. We've used it to moderate online discussion boards. We've done this with student success metrics. We've done this in chatbots that have conversations about enrollment, nudging to retention. All of these things have been powered by parts of that. The adaptive learning models and personalized learning that we engage in some places, scheduling, facilities management, how we decide like space usage and all of that, a lot of work in predictive analytics. All of these pieces are things that we've been using AI for across higher education. We actually even use it in academic publishing. There's a link to an article there. If you're like, wait, what? Please feel free to take a look at that and learn more. But it's not uncommon. The difference is that students are now using it in ways that maybe we don't feel comfortable with. But we do have a history on that. I am waiting for the AI chatbot that comes out that faculty will fall in love with and be like, I now am best friends with generative AI, because it's like when you get an email from a student, like, what is this about? That it replies with where that information is in the syllabus on the faculty member's behalf. And I feel like that's how we win people's hearts and minds. But we're not there. If you want to see what is the guidance around this, so there's all of these tools, but there's lots of concerns. There's privacy concerns, there's ethical concerns, there's how do we regulate all of this and this widening area concerns that are related to that. The White House does have a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights that you can take a look at and review. The European Commission Union has sort of guidelines. Most of these things are very principles, guidelines, foundations by which we want to engage with AI related, but have some useful pieces of information in that space. The Office of Educational Technology for the U.S. Department of Education, in fact, has here are our insights and recommendations on using this. And they have this kind of cool category of how they put together what you might be doing or using different pieces for. Their key foundations in how we work with it are start with people, not the technology, which I think is an excellent starting point. And regardless of what we're doing, do this in ways that advance equity, ensure safety, ethics, and effectiveness, and promote transparency. Be clear when you're doing it, be clear when you're not. Be clear how you're using it, how you're not, and really think about it in our assessment space as something about feedback loops and formative assessment. So how are we using this to help advance the process of learning, not check someone's learning, which is a slightly different tweak. So if you need some guidance there, I think that's a good resource. If you're also interested in the conversations that are happening internationally, the Australian government has a really nice, this is open for comment until October 20th. So I invite you to comment. And it was built from work that was done by David Bowd and his group Cradle in a piece, Assessment 2020, which is very similar in a lot of ways to the principles of good assessment practice. And they start with foundations of fairness, accessibility, transparency, all of the things that you'd want to see, right to privacy, respecting students as individuals. It's very good. And they agree that students are positioned as partners in their learning. So right there, they're speaking to my heart. And they have principles to think about. How do we use this in our practice? What does this look like? How do we think about policy related to it? It's a nice short read to take a look at. Disciplinary associations have also been involved. So you've had governments, you've had research institutes putting things out, and now you have writing centers. Of course, the Modern Language Association was like, hold on, it can do writing assignments. We will comment on this. Let us make a joint task force and put out some information. Again, they have 12 principles to guide practice. And I will say, in none of these things is anyone trying to block use of it. So it's not, how do I create a task that students can't use AI on? Or how do I create a policy that blocks this from being a part of it? It's how do we integrate, embed, and use this in ways that make sense to the educational goals that we're looking for and we're trying to do. So wide group there. Another on that, I mentioned Cradle. So if you're not familiar with Cradle, it's the Center for Research and Assessment in Digital Learning. They have some also really great resources, landscape kind of resources related to this that I invite you to take a look at as well. And one of my favorites, students have been leading a part of this conversation. Students came and put together webinars. They were like, I'll tell you what I think. I'll tell you what I'm doing with it. I'll tell you where I'm confused. The AIX education conference was actually done by 11 student volunteers that were like, we're going to put a conference together and invite and bring people to this. And so when you think too about an opportunity for, we don't have to solve for this, we can do this in community and partnership with our students, seems like a really nice opportunity space but there's definitely the student voice piece of this, providing some guidance and thought. And then lastly, Centers for Teaching and Learning have been another great resource of putting information out, like when should I use a tool and when should I not? If you like decision trees because you're an engineer, this is for you. If you like more policy narrative pieces, here's a collection of resources from different places that have tools, guidelines, feedback, policies, whatever that may be. So the point is, people are trying to figure it out. They aren't trying to put it at arm's length. They're trying to put things around it to have it not be restrictive, but principle driven, which is on point for, I think, how adaption and these types of things move. And really trying to say, how do we enable and support this in meaningful ways for our faculty to engage with? The biggest piece across everything that you hear, if we're thinking landscape conversations, though, is academic integrity. So these other kind of guidance and principles and these nice reports that people are putting out, at the end of the day, people want to know what's it good at, what's it not. So I want my SWOT analysis on strengths, and I want to know, what does this mean for academic integrity? Like if I don't know that Natasha did this work and I'm going to say, Natasha has learned this, that's a problem. This has consistently been a problem, and this is not a new problem for assessment. We're like, I think we've heard this before, and things that we're still trying to work our way around. But the question you may ask is, well, why? If we've been using it for all these different things, if we have all of these different processes in place, why suddenly now is this such a huge issue? And the reason is it can generate content, and they're super easy to use. The user interface has gotten to a place where it's like, oh, I put in a chat and it's fine. And it can do lots of things. It can respond to multiple choice questions. It can actually write you computer programming code, which is nice. Give you draft cover letters. It can make you email messages. It can craft exam questions for you. It can write you learning objectives. It'll even give you draft rubrics on things. If you're like, I would like a rubric that does the following parts. Now remember, prompts are important in how you put it together. Study guides can give you like case examples. It can do all kinds of stuff. And remember, this is the worst it's going to be, as we currently are in its journey. So that's very troubling in terms of all the different things that it can do in all those different ways, and the ease of that user interface. The second part that makes it really scary to academic integrity conversations is we can't detect it. We're not good at it. Even AI cannot detect AI, which is sort of like, I don't know, chickens and eggs and a breakfast joke that I don't have at the moment, but not yet. AI cannot detect AI yet. It's continuing to refine and collect more data. It's a process, but at this point, not with accuracy. And in terms of, well, sometimes it put out things that don't align with our prompt. So you wouldn't actually even want to turn it in as any good work because it's not right. Well, there's some guidance in getting better about how to do prompts to get things out of it in the way that you want. And you're like, well, what about, will it produce the same thing over time? So I'll be able to catch it because it looks the same. It's like, well, the responses vary over time, and depending on what you put in, it's not going to, even if you put the same prompt in, you will get a slightly different response from it. So not so great at the catching of the pieces around it, and super easy to use. That combination is like the things that make us clutch our pearls in education related to this. And you also think about that, what should we be thinking about? Or maybe that's okay, because there are some things that it's not great at doing. So it's not going to be a problem for us at this moment. And it's more reliable for things that are actually our more entry-level courses and a lot of our writing assignments. It's less reliable for our higher order things. Private data sets, no. Do not put any private information into these things. Do not give it your data. Don't put other data in it either. That's an important piece. But more reliable, less reliable, again, this will change over time for things. So what can we do in the current landscape conversations here and abroad? What sort of are the things that people agree about on the advice on the academic integrity front? And some of these things will sound very familiar. One is set clear policies and expectations for the use of AI in your course. Do you allow it? Do you not? In what ways? What kind of citation do you want to see? What kind of reflection on the use of it do you want to see related to that? Promote transparency and dialogue. If you use it, acknowledge how and reflect on, like, did it help? Did it take more time for you to use it? We'll talk about some assignment examples in a bit and sort of what that's done for students and their understanding of it. And help students understand by fostering intrinsic motivation how a task is actually going to be really important for me to do it, that this is important for my learning, for my future attainment of goals. Think about how we provide space for that self-reflection on my learning process and what I need as a learner, scaffolding our assignments, not just giving one big thing to be due at the end, but thinking about how do we build and chunk it along the way, and then give feedback to our students and opportunities for them to use it so that they can have those revision places, they can engage in that, which all sounds like really good pedagogical practice that we've been talking about for years. Connect it to real world situations. Give students autonomy and choice. They want to feel connected to teachers and their peers, that they matter, that sense of belonging, hugely important, related to a student's willingness or interest to cheat, let alone use an AI. And ensure inclusive teaching. This is important because some of the responses have been, well, we will only now do exams where you sit in front of me and I watch you. Or we will only do oral assignments where I'm like staring at you as you're talking. Don't make it where you have to do it in front of me or those places. That's, again, we'll talk more about that in the assignment section. Other ones that are pretty consistent across the conversation landscape now is reduce perceived workload and pressure. If students are like, this is busy work and I'm overloaded right now, the desire to offload on something that can take some of that cognitive piece away from me higher than if I feel like I can manage this and I have my space. Ask for documentation of and reflection on how you did it. Emphasize our relationships. I enjoy the test your assignment on AI, like see what it would get and what it does. Again, you're not trying to AI proof your assignments in some of this and then get rid of that busy work. These are pretty much the things that keep popping up across the landscape related to that. So what should we be doing across kind of guidelines and principles and all of these different pieces of conversation today? Well, one is don't try to block AI or ban it. It's not going to make sense. It's not going to work. It's going to give you different issues than trying to figure out how you want to embed it, in what ways, and what makes sense for what you're trying to do. Our task as educators is not to seek out and find bits of these things, but to help prepare our students to navigate in a future where they will be using this all the time. Information literacy and librarians right now are like, I've been telling you for a while, like, this is an issue. We thought we had a misinformation issue before. I can now produce like potential misinformation pieces much faster. That's an issue. But if part of what we're going to be doing is thinking about how are our students ready to use this in work? How do they need to be good stewards and engage in that? That sounds to me like a new program learning outcome or an institutional level learning outcome that we need to think about how we're embedding in our work. And so instead of thinking about like, how do I write a policy that can block all these things? Really, we should be having conversations on what skill sets do we need to equip our students with versus how do I protect a structure that we have in place in higher ed? And so that's a piece that we'll continue through. But that was your like fast run through of the current national and international conversations. There are additional resources. The beautiful part about this is it's like a river. It is moving and flowing. You can step in and have a conversation. If you step in at a different point, it's a different river because it's moving all the time. And so please participate if you have time. I know that everyone's a little overstressed on time at the moment, but it's a really good open community at the chance nationally and internationally to engage on it. So I want to now move to our second part where we're going to really focus in. I keep doing that. I'm so sorry. On troubling the assignment conversation. And by trouble, I mean, I just want to like kind of raise an eyebrow at it and be like, well, is it? Or what really what's going on behind it in this space? So the academic integrity bit has been the loudest across all the conversations. And there's lots of concerns like, oh my gosh, it can pass medical exams. What? I can't pass a medical exam. It's fine. You're not an AI. You don't have all this stuff to pull from. If I had all of the things that I had available to me pull from, I would be pretty pretty able to do that too. Most of the conversation space also focuses within that on assignments. So how do we craft tasks in ways to really get to the learning that we want to see and think about the role that the generative AI plays in it. And most of these things are focused on writing assignments at the moment, because of that generative part of the AI. But in some ways, if we focus on, how do I kind of put the Jello mold around where AI is now, we hinder ourselves down the road since this keep moving. And so if you're trying to tackle a moving target, what is that Wayne Gretzky quote where you don't go to the puck, you skate to where the puck is going to be? Is that, if any sports people, if you know this, help me out in the chat. But am I putting it incorrectly? Clearly huge hockey fan. Because I didn't know that one. But I think that's what we need to be thinking about here is where do we need to set ourselves up for in our assignment conversations and all of that. Miriam Scott has some really nice things on her website related to different ideas and nice little visuals around it to say there are things that we definitely don't want to have happening. Like we don't want plagiarism. We never want plagiarism in higher ed, whatever that might be. We don't want to just pass an assignment where students are like, just do this for me because I don't have time. Just like we don't want contract cheating where I paid for someone to complete my task for me. We also don't want to have it be where I think you know something and I'm like, you're doing great. You're now ready for this next learning opportunity and you actually aren't because, you didn't do it. Or you're like, yes, this is the true answer because I put it in ChatGPT and it's, you're not doing your reference checking on things. But we can have I need ideas to get started. I wanted some helpful study tools to have me think about this. And I need a better way to grasp this concept that I'm working and what I am looking at in this text. It's just not helping me. So give me 5 different summaries of this to help me understand. Is my writing getting any better? Can you give me some feedback on common writing things that I'm doing wrong or, help with my presentation skills or whatever, that these places of embedding it in my process of improving my learning as a student, spot on and very nice and very good. The top comments in AI conversations on what to do with your assignments have been increase your assessment literacy, help students understand why you are asking them to do what you are asking them to do. Which to those of us in the assessment community is like, are you kidding me? We've been talking about that for years, right? So increase that assessment literacy, promote transparency, involve students in it, and focus on sense of belonging and mattering. Those 4 pop up across principles, across foundations, across the articles talking about why someone revised an assignment in the way that they did related to it. And so I just want to say real quick, I'm going to jump. I'll come back to that in a minute. The other thing that comes up too is how do we create a learning environment around this that really supports the kind of learning that we want our students to engage in? And it's things like we have clear course expectations. Our instructional design makes sense. It's well organized. We have good design happening within it. We talk about the importance of academic integrity. We're like, here's why this matters, because you're part of an arc of learning that we're scaffolding you through. We explain what counts as an infraction and why that matters. We invite students to share with us if you're feeling like your effort is not counted in this assignment. And so you're checking out like, fine, whatever, it doesn't matter what I'm going to do. It's not going to work. So I'll just throw it in this chat bot. Have that conversation with us so we can make it change to be a different environment to really elevate your learning. Think about that design between how much challenge do you put in a course, how much support, and that progressive arc of learning. So a lot of this is professional development for faculty on teaching and learning. A lot of this is really great instructional design. A lot of this goes back to our constant related of how do we prepare those that will be our teachers to be prepared to teach in these spaces. So you can't out-design it, you can't outrun it, so let's not do that. We don't want to be like with cell phones. We're like, thou shalt not have a cell phone in my class. When students are like, I'm learning on this, what are you talking about? We don't want to get into the do or I can see it assignments like in class, viva voces or oral assessments, those kinds of things. That's one way to go. You can collaborate with it. So I want to use this to help generate ideas. I'm going to use it in the discovery process. What's out there? Give me a summary of things that are out there. Iterate ideas. but being clear instructions on how I can or cannot use it and how I have to talk about my use of it and how that fit in, and then include both. So maybe I start with, I critique some things that were prepared by AI, and then I have to do an in-class presentation where then my peers are offering me feedback on the final product related to it. So I think that's a helpful kind of 3 range area to think about where people are trying to modify assignments with a caveat of context. It's going to be built into Microsoft Office Suite. So that will happen. So if we're like, you can't have it, it's going to be in the things we're using. Students from K-12 will expect it to be a part of their education. So if we're like trying to grab the people we have right now, it's a bit of a problem. And our adult students that come in that use it at work will be like, why can't I use this here? Much like cell phone conversations that we've had with people before. If you also think that if I record an audio or if it's an oral assessment, that's fine and that will count for it, I hate to tell you, most of the generative AI conversations have focused on the writing assignment issue. You can do image and audio. I invite you to actually take a look at Leon Furr's made an AI podcast. It's the AI made a mimic copy of his voice and wrote the script. And so it's like not him doing a podcast. It's like a 4-minute, and you're like, what? Technology. Think about deepfake videos. You can actually have this virtual professor IO where it's related to exams. And so if you think outside of writing assignments, you're like, it's fine. I don't do writing assignments. Like, no. There's lots of things in this space that are happening. A lot of these, though, students aren't using. A lot of them require some kind of cost related to it, which means that you have equity issues for who would be engaging in that. And a lot of them also take more time than it might be worth to have just done it yourself at this point. But I just want to throw that out there. So if you're like, it's writing only, it's not writing alone. So what happened, some of the responses where people have been doing things with assignments and tasks? Well, this comes from a faculty member who actually gave the students an assignment where they had to do it and then have AI do the same task. And then they compared and evaluated what the AI did on like their rubrics that they had, shared their experience with that, and discussed like, when is AI helpful for me in my learning and when is it not? And then they had to submit like a reflection on, when will I use this? How did I use it? What might be helpful? And these are some of the quotes that came out of that. That was like, oh, I really like that. It felt like eating a bowl of store-bought pasta with nothing in it. On the writing, to say the least. I doubt I'll use it for writing again, because it's popping out things that don't have voice oftentimes in it. It's predicting in some of those pieces. So at first students were like, oh, I don't know, you're having me use it and I'm going to find out how easy to use it and then I'm going to use it on everything. And then they're like, well, actually it wasn't really great for that. There was no emotion, and there's other things that I want to say. So some of our kind of like, can be, we don't know how many students are using it. We don't know. We haven't used it ourselves. There's a wide number of faculty that have not played around with it and tried different things. But there are ways that you can change assignments to introduce your students, yourself, and teach them how to navigate and move through it. So what might be some of these ways forward? Well, some of it could be solutions to address this, really build on the trends, if you weren't picking up on that, on where we've already been trying to go. Involve students, address equity, have authentic assignments, give people alternative assignments. These are conversations that we have been having for quite a while. If you remember, there was a survey report that came out that was talking about where are our future issues of need coming out of the pandemic, and it was, what's the role of students in assessment? How are we thinking about the relationship with technology and cheating and proctoring and assessment? How do we use technology in supportive learning? Where do we get trusted evidence sources and equitable data? And how do we get assessment as an equitable pedagogical practice? These are movements of things that have been happening on the ground. We have a moment to capitalize on this in very helpful ways to advance an agenda that's been developing for quite a while, but now has as a new thing with AI on it. If you want some resources related to that, I offer you these. This one's a nice one about thinking about connected information and what does that mean for how students engage in their learning. And then also, Mary Lee is always so good at thinking about what do we know about how people learn and how can that help us think about engaging in tools and pieces. So if you're like, oh, but what I think these are two helpful ways to go forward. We also know that on the transparency side of things and pushing assignments to be more clear and have students understand, why are you asking me to do this? Is it worth my time to engage in it? This is something we've known for years. John Hattie's work, who just released an updated version of this in 2023, is a synthesis, it's a meta-analysis of all of these studies that look at, if you just make what we're trying to do clear to students on that transparency part, they learn more, they're more engaged in the learning, and all of these wonderful benefits pay off. And so if a student can't answer, what am I learning from this experience? How does this build upon prior things? What's expected of me? How can I prepare for success? And where else will this learning be applied or applicable? I am more likely to go somewhere else to do something. If you tell me, Natasha, put together an agenda for this call, and I'm like, oh, I don't have a lot of time, I'm going to run over to my ChatGPT and be like, put together an agenda for this type of call and develop this, because that's not a good use of my time, right? One of the things about privilege is time and access to resources. And so how do we think about, are we helping our students understand that and see it? And while that's showing up across the generative AI assessment conversation, that is something that we have talked about, that we can be leaders on as assessment professionals to help faculty and others understand and think about how to do it. We've been doing it in assignments with the work that Marianne Winklemas has done in the transparency in learning and teaching, where we knew from before that if you're clear in assignment prompts, you can close equity gaps. Like, what? So if you have generative AI enter, how are we also thinking about these pieces in connection to that? And so if we can add as assessment these parts of things that we've already been doing, that we know about, that we've been leading on conversations into this space, and be like, aha, you are looking for a design change. Let me help you in ways that we know can be beneficial and very useful for our students that are popping up across the guidelines and things anyway. And it's involving students, which is a good thing across the board for everyone right now, because it's just really, it's very good. We'll just say that. You can also diversify the types of things that you're asking students to do. So if I'm like, hey, you have to do this in a closed book way, why? Is it the kind of task where that will be expected of me in reality, or will I be able to source information as needed? How can I create an exam if I'm a student? Can you have me find and explain the wrong answers? Find this and tell me why it's wrong. Most of our bots at this point will find the right answer and tell you why it's right, not find the wrong answer and tell you why it's wrong, which is a different way to talk about what you know and can learn in that space. And in all of the resources that are coming out on generative AI on, we need authentic assessments to help it. This has been a conversation that's been happening for a while on. It needs to be real and challenging, but involve student judgment, and it needs to be relevant to me. And if it's not, then we're less likely to have our students engage and do these things. So we know that we've known all of these pieces. We've known all of these barriers to student learning. These have been, if you notice, these barriers to student learning are the things that are being asked to do to revise generative AI tasks. That is not new. It's just presented in a different way. And if we don't address those barriers and we don't connect it, we know our students are more likely to cheat. So if my concern is academic integrity, it's not potentially about changing my assignment so much as making it clear why I'm asking you to do what it is that I'm asking you to do, and how this assignment adds value to your learning, or it doesn't, or where generative AI can be helpful to you in that space. This is also increasingly important as we think about the pressure to cheat or to cognitive offload pieces in other ways, because we've tried to address this before. This is not something new in the ways that we've gone about trying to corral students, and doing that by saying it's about clarity and honor codes. It's about having our students navigate technology. It's about authentic assessments. This is from just having students not cheat. Sounds very similar to the materials coming out on generative AI, but we are in very different times. So let me give you a bit of context around that. Students that have come out of pandemic learning and are still persisting through, or that have been leaving this, feel unprepared, are less likely to retain their learning in these spaces, take longer to complete their coursework, and need accommodations in it. That was in 2021. 2022, College Pulse did the same survey. Students were like, I am not motivated. I have a hard time concentrating. I have mental health concerns. I feel like I'm behind academically. These are perfect context situations for me to say, I don't have it in me to do this today. I need to offload this onto something else, okay? And then you fast forward to 2023, and you have College Pulse, some survey went out and students were like, I'm struggling to balance life and responsibilities, which is not a part of our generative AI conversation at this point in terms of we're like, how do I make this task different? Not what is going on with our students and how can this be a lifesaver in some things where you're like, I can actually complete and get through by using this. And that's, you're not going to be able to compete with yet. And there are things that students want. They want different teaching styles. They want those clear expectations. They want people to know them. And we have faculty that are concerned about students' disengagement. We also have students that are reporting they don't know what office hours are. This is one of my favorite student focus group findings that happened from this time period, where they asked students like, let's talk about basic lingo we have in higher ed. And students were like, oh, I would never visit someone during their office hour or send them an email because that's their quiet time. Like that's when they're working. That's their time in the office. You're like, ooh, no, right? So as we think about how do we marry our attention of generative AI and the conversations that are there, two of the things that we know that are helpful, like if students are really at the center and a part of this, how do we balance when you have struggle, when you need to cognitive offload, where is this helpful and where is it not? In my task, where do I really need your focus and where do I not? As you think about balancing all of these conflicting places that you have, where is this a good opportunity to keep you with us? And where do I really need you to take the time and why? Why? All of that part's so important and matters. And if you're like, oh, what is this cognitive load you keep talking about? This slide is for you. There are resources there. Happy reading and enjoy. And that's kind of sad because you're like, office hours, they don't know. And students, what? I thought we were talking about how to make my assignment really cool in AI. And we are. But it's a little depressing, the larger context. So I offer you happy animals to look at, like, look at this hedgehog. That pig is in boots. Oh, that's just too cute. So there you go. That's your sad animals. Now, the last thing for happy animals for being sad, because we got bogged down in our desires in ChatGPT to sort of ChatGPT proof our assessments. And that was our knee-jerk reaction that we started with in these conversations, or to figure out how do we detect generative AI work in our student work. We made some bad policy choices that we cannot enforce and that can cause harm. And I want to give you an example. Do you remember when we had the pivot to remote instruction? Proctoring was like huge. People were like, let us proctor them. I want to see in your room. And if you sneeze, like it's going to be flagged. And if you like look at the window or your dog's barking, like you're going to get flagged for all these things. The students were like freaking out and you had to have download things on your home computer that blocked all this stuff. And you had to, like, you had no choice, right? You had to do that. Otherwise you couldn't sit for these exams. If you got kicked out and booted out, like, can you imagine the stress? So much like the pivot that happened in the pieces, in the name of academic integrity, we had two very different experiences that unfolded. One, faculty course evaluations, where in response to that and online proctoring, course evaluations became optional for a lot of faculty as part of their review. They were not used for personnel decisions. Disciplinary associations wrote statements about how to use them. What are the guiding principles in space on this? It came from a place of saying, they're doing so much, they're pivoting. This is very, we need to be responsive and supportive. The student experience of that on the other side was, we were like, oh, students are going to cheat if I can't see them. They're going to be making bad life choices. So we're going to require this and you're going to have to do it to your summative assessments. And, with little monitoring to know if that actually limits or reduces the amount of these instances. Oh, and by the way, it requires a camera, certain internet speeds. You got to download all these things. They will capture images of you and your voice and your room that you're in. And you can't do anything about that. So you have some privacy concerns related to those pieces. And students were going, I am so stressed out. Exams were already stressful, but this is like off the chart stress. I can't find a place to do these studies. We knew huge equity issues related to this. And our response was to just be like, shh, do you see these cheating levels that these proctoring exams are talking about? Like, we need more proctoring. In the name of academic integrity, sense of belonging was squashed in the student experience. Learning, I don't know, how well do you present your learning when you're like freaking out, balancing a laptop on your lap and like hoping that you don't look the wrong way to have something out? And if you're any Foucauldians out there, it's a very panopticon experience related to that. We do not want that same thing to happen with ChatGPT, but we started down that spiral immediately in the ChatGPT academic integrity conversation. I point you to Coughlin, Miller, and Patterson. They have this wonderful framework that, while it was done for the ethics of online exam proctoring, it's just incredibly useful as you think about the use of technology in relation to learning. Like, one, yes, we need academic integrity. It's important. We need to know that it was you. If we're going to say you know something and we're going to stand behind that, like, I want to know that it was you. But there's all these other pieces too, like fairness. Do students have equitable access to this technology and remote exam testing? Good question still for the ChatGPT. Like, which version are you using? Do you have access to it? Do you know how to use it? Have you been taught how to do prompts? You know, all of these kinds of pieces. Transparency shows up there across the board. Very nicely done. Is this one, I love this piece. I think this should just be in our assessment like frameworks regardless, that does not cause harm to our subject. So can you use this without causing harm to students? That question, not anywhere in the things that we've reviewed or conversations that are happening, but huge question. Privacy. What happens to this personal data? Right now, in most of these things, you don't put your personal data into ChatGPT. You'll be like, I'm going to dump all these papers in here, see what comes out. Like, be careful in your choices around that. But are we being respectful of privacy? Do students have a choice? So respect for autonomy. Can you say, no, I need another way? And in most instances, we have not provided that autonomy for our students in spaces that are incredibly invasive. So that's an issue. Liberty and trust and accountability are others. But frameworks that go beyond, this is one piece of a larger puzzle of which our students are part of it. When we think about those guidelines and sense of belonging and mattering, how do all of these other pieces play into how we think about revising our work and doing it? And if you're interested in this conversation or anything else related to assessment security, you should talk to Philip Dawson or go see his work. That's him with his book. I think the work that he has done and how he talks about it, how he pulls together different strands of conversations is second to none in this area. And he's an improv comedian. So, you know, that's fabulous. You're going to be like assessment security and jokes. Like, what more could you possibly want in that space? All right, so we've covered a lot of ground. We talked about what's happening nationally in the concepts of what's out there, what are resources, where are there places that you can have conversations. We talked about what are those conversations pointing us towards in terms of revising in our work and our assignments. And lo and behold, most of it very similar to the things that we've been talking about. So good job us. That means we were on a right track anyway. But there's one other piece of things that I want to kind of poke at and see what's going on with it in the current sort of conversation on ChatGPT and assessment. And it goes a little something like this. So there's a current, I don't know, an undercurrent maybe in the thinking at play that students, yes, 100% agree, need to acknowledge how they've used generative AI in their assignments. Makes perfect sense to me. If I'm using it and it's informing something, tell me about it, do the reflection. I love that. That makes sense. The concept that I want to point at is the idea that students work alone, not influenced by anything other than their own brain in a somehow deserted library just for photography purposes, right? And that is just not correct. So underneath a lot of these discussions that are these academic integrity pieces is an assumption that students have to do things entirely alone, not aided by anyone else. It is Natasha's learning solely, no one else's. So all of those of you that I've had conversations with, too bad. It was me alone, you know, that kind of thing. And that's a very Western individualistic norm. And it's also a very Western idea of who owns knowledge and how knowledge is produced and what that looks like. So I want to give you a couple of examples. When I was doing my graduate work, I would search for a particular book, right? And I would go to the library stacks. I have no idea if people still go to library stacks, but I found a photo of someone in a library stack. So at least photography is still occurring in library stacks. One of the things that you would find there is all of this stuff around the book you went for that's related to that topic that you didn't even think about, that you weren't even aware of, but it was because of how the other material was organized. It was a medium by which I could find other things that were connected based on some other classification system. And I just happened to find that. When you think about how some of these other tools are doing, it's built up of that same idea. I'm coming to look for one thing. And because of how this is classified in the classification system, I'm pointed to other things that are around it that I wouldn't have thought of, that I wouldn't have seen. I didn't have to say, I went to the library stacks and I found in this other area, or this cover looked really cool. And I stopped and I was like, what is this? And that influenced my thinking in all of these spaces, right? So there's some of how do you get to information? Where do we pull that from too? But also the conversations that students have, the coffee shops they go to, the online discussion rooms that they have conversations in, the forums where they're posting things about it, the TikTok videos of students leaving an exam being like, oh my gosh, guys, I just did this exam. The question was this, I said that, I feel like I failed. Somebody help me out, make me feel better. That's community group learning. None of those things are we like, oh, you didn't do that on your own. No, that doesn't count in these spaces. And so there's something about the underlying thought of where do we have in some of our knee-jerk reactions to how we're approaching ChatGPT, how we're thinking about generative AI, do we need to check ourselves on ideas of ownership of knowledge and Western individualistic norms that pop up in here? And I think we need to. I don't have a good answer to that other than to wave my finger around and continue. It also says, though, that our students, when we think about who our students are, this is the very hard to read infographic, but I enjoy it immensely, mostly for the stuff up here that's hilarious to read, but focus on this for now, which is our students aren't in a place where they want to learn alone. They don't want to be like, all right, I'm going to go off and do this. I'm self-directed. They want to work together. They want to be virtual. They talk to chatbots. They grew up with things being like, I'll talk to this chatbot. And that's a part of the norm of how we're thinking about it. So we have to think about, if that's a norm, how do we build things around it to be helpful? Also, another super fun, this part down here, hilarious, but focus in this corner. Save this part for later. Thinking too about collaboration and contribution is a shift in how different generations want to work together and how they also go about effective engagement, what that looks like, how they want to learn, when they think their learning is happening, and how all of these pieces fit together. So if I just revise my assignment to be like, sit in front of me so I can see you do it, because academic integrity alone at the expense of this, like, oh, we're going to lose a lot of learners. We're going to hit on that sense of belonging. We're going to hit on the involving students and get part of the solutions to this piece bad. So I want to say, as people in higher ed and particularly assessment professionals, we are doers. As soon as somebody's like, this is happening, we are off. We're like, I will build a form. I bet there's a thing for this. Like, we could solve it. And we immediately jump into the solution part. We don't sit and be like, what should we be doing and why? And what really is a problem here? And that doesn't mean that we just keep sitting as a thinker. But sometimes we need to think before we do and pause in some of those places. And that's a role that we can play as assessment professionals, to be like, but do we? Like, what are we really talking about here? Because, and also, this is just hilarious to me as a photo. So I wanted to find something with like blinders. But the fact that someone was like, here, let's get all these people in suits together and look in different directions, like, just tickles my heart. And so I'm sharing it with all of you. But there are blind spots that we have. So when we do academic integrity, and how do I block for that at the expense of all this other stuff that we know, all of these things that we've been working and talking about and doing in higher education, we end up tying our own hands in ways that are not helpful to us, our students, our faculty, or our staff. So remember, we're educators, we're not police. Unless you're a police educator, and then you're still an educator first in this situation. So that's how we do that. Ask ourselves, these are questions we can bring up in things. Are we assessing privilege or learning in this assignment? What is the role of generative AI in getting at that? Does this task actually align to the learning outcomes? Are we just throwing something in to throw something in? Does this fit with the evaluative criteria? Am I appropriately scaffolding students to be successful on it? Where is the role of generative AI in that or not? Have the things we have been doing been really good assessments of learning, or have they been really good at how people take tests? These are questions that we're asking, that we can continue to ask, that we can engage in, because how we need to make changes at this point in time to our practice faster to get a better look at students' thinking and their process in that thinking. So for instance, if I'm thinking about like, I want you to explain why an answer was wrong. right? That's a good way for me to check a student's understanding. That widens what I'm looking at in this space. So if we can change how we're getting a glimpse into that thinking process while advancing pedagogical practices we've been trying to do for years, like portfolios, that are now coming back like, oh my gosh, you know what? We could use portfolios to solve for this. And people that have been doing portfolios are like banging their head against a wall. Like, are you kidding me? Been talking about the importance of reflection for years and transference of knowledge. And they're like, you know what? We should do transference of knowledge. I'm like, oh. So either you feel like super validated or exhausted. I don't know. So all of that is to say, that's really great. As I started to talk about these pieces, I'm pushing in what you can do as assessment people, what people can do as assessment professionals, but I didn't quite talk about what this means for the assessment process and profession. And I will be super short on this so we can open this up for discussion and dialogue and questions and all of that. I want to make sure we have ample time for those pieces. So how has this stuff been used by faculty and staff in higher ed on the ChatGPT? And there's this nice article on exploring user perspectives, and it's been used to proofread research papers. Faculty have used it to prepare their lecture notes, to create class presentation slides, to compose literature reviews, to help them sift through articles to determine, like, should I read this? Should I not? Is this really good? Filter information. No problems with that. No one was like getting out their pitchfork, you know, being like, this won't stand. We can't allow for it. They're like, oh, that's very smart of you. But if a student were to do something like, whoa, watch yourself. And these are some nice quotes that came from the faculty and staff that used it. Like, I can enter an article or book chapter that I want to present in my next class meeting, and it gives me this great outline for my slides. I can edit it and do all of this, and that's fine. Helped with grading C++ homework. Like, it also made a grading rubric. Like, what? That's fabulous. Changed communication. So they put in, like, here's how I'm writing and presenting about it. Is this understandable? Where is this, like, where does it lack coherent? Where do I need to be clearer? And getting feedback on it. So they're using it in ways that are actually supporting a learning process, which means we can do it. We are doing it. How do we build that into our tasks and our work? For assessment professionals specifically, and you think about what you're doing in your daily business, and if you're an office of one, you're like, hello, ChatGPT, how are you doing today? It's very nice to see you. Like, I would like to have you join me in here with our cup of tea together, because you can get feedback on assessment reports. Now, again, be careful about privacy and what information you're putting in and if it's like identifiable and that kind of stuff. But you could have faculty could use this to actually draft assessment reports. They could use ChatGPT to generate learning outcomes. They can check, like, how do I get an aligned assignment to what I'm doing here, get these draft rubrics that they can bring to help you. Like, now we can talk about this instead of like, I don't know where to start and I have to do this all on my own and it's so troublesome. You can say, try this. This would be good. You can use this to give feedback to people on their reports, to draft your own meta assessment rubric, to say, what are professional development prompts that would help faculty understand the following thing? And it will generate ideas for you on that. That's a helpful, great use of our time, potentially, and what you do with it. You can also use it. This is something we were trying a couple of weeks ago on accreditation reports. You can draft parts of your accreditation reports. You can have it summarize elements of successful accreditation reports related to assessment standards. What were the key elements of that? What went into it? How did it look like? What did it do? So that's something that we can think about. You can have it help you with data visualization and reporting, data analysis for open-ended surveys. One of the things that I hear consistently across assessment folk is they're like, I have all this great open-ended data. I don't have time to do anything with it. Is there opportunity spaces here? And there has been some like conversations and some listservs, like, who's doing this? Are you trying it? Like, how's it going? What's working out there? If a department is meeting with you, you're like, I know nothing about mechatronics. Let me come up with some ideas of something that might be helpful to engage in this conversation. If you're looking for what are the top 5 ways to engage faculty in assessment, or you can actually put in, I did a prompt that was like, how do I get them to love assessment? And it was actually, it was a good use of my time. And draft agendas for meeting and all of these things. The point is we can use this in ways that help our practice and process. And we have not yet gotten into a conversation, I think, comprehensively around where that makes sense, where it doesn't, how this can help our work and how we can offload certain things that we're like, this is so tedious for us to do. I would much rather spend my time engaging in these kinds of things. How do I find ways to move this work somewhere else so I can spend that time better done? Because we know we're not going to get more people. we were going to get more people. We would have gotten more people in our office by now. I'm sorry if I'm the one to break that to you. We love you just how you are. It's going to be okay. You can also say, and I do still think at the end of this, hopefully you picked up on several threads, but one is, I think we need learning outcomes on the use of AI. Like, this isn't just an assignment issue on how do I deal with this. This is, what is our institution learning outcome, or our gen ed learning outcome, or our program learning outcome on AI? And I asked AI, I was like, what would be a good learning outcome? And so just to see, because that's fun. And it gives you, here's the learning outcome, and then a nice breakdown of an explanation and what happens when you achieve it, which is, you know, an overachiever in my book. I just wanted a learning outcome. But the idea is, I do think we need something. This is not it, but we need something in this space where we aren't trying to solve one-offs. We aren't trying to be responsive to just the writing faculty and not at the expense of our artistic departments or programs, but saying, how do we embed this across our institution? How do we think about this collectively as something that we are doing in our work, built on principles that we know that we've been working and driving toward as a profession? And that is something we can manage, that is something we can do, and that is something that we are already working towards. So I will stop there. You have the slides. There's some additional resources and the end there if you're like, I'm interested in this, or that seems like a cool topic, or I need other questions. And of course, feel free to email me if you have something, or you're like, do you know, is a group talking about this related to it? I might not, but I have people I can ask, and I'm very happy to do that. But all this to say, I think assessment professionals are incredibly well positioned to tackle some of these challenges, to address it, but to also make it not just about these knee-jerk reactions that we have at time in some of these conversations, and keep our principles at the forefront of our work. So you got this, and I'm excited. I will stop there, and let me stop our share so I can see you all. I miss you. Don't feel obligated to turn your camera on, keep it off, or stay on your phone, but I'm just gonna not stare at the slides. So let me stop my share and say, what questions do you have?
Well, Natasha, my head is spinning, and I'm sure I'm not the only one here. This is just a fantastic overview of the scope, the depth of the changes that are happening right in front of us. The question that I would have, sort of the directly related to this evolution of the teacher versus student role in the classroom, and really impact on the higher education or education altogether as we know it, right? The teacher is not the stage at the stage anymore. Learning is ubiquitous. Students can get their answers, you know, hey teacher, well, let me check if you're right or not. I have a tool right here. How do you think this is going to evolve? It looks like you mentioned reflection and all those practices that were somewhat new, right? We would look at them like, yeah, that's something for us to do, this portfolio. Yeah, it sounds like a good idea, but you know, I have a lecture to do here, kind of a thing. So this is historically what we've been used to, and all of a sudden these teaching and learning practices that are so inclusive of our student thinking come to surface, whether we like it or not, right? The importance of reflection, the importance of really making sure that students can demonstrate their learning rather than us telling them, well, I am wrong, you're right, and I'm going to prove it to you. So how do things such as competency-based education or really focus on what it is that students learn in as a result of our instructional activities, where do you think that's going to lead us in terms of perhaps the future? And again, there's quite a vivid discussion about the topic. That the future is here, and the changes may happen faster than we expect, faster than we think.
No, that's true. Yeah. So I don't have a crystal ball, and I apologize. I'm getting over a cold.
Oh.
And so I have like a giant throat lozenge in my mouth at the moment, so I can keep talking. So if people are like, what are you doing? I'm trying not to choke on you. This will get me through. It's really hard to tell. Like, so I think we aren't going to get over right away a lot of the immediate, how do I protect my assignment this term from this, and how, you know, the side-eyeing of our students that we do. This has been an enduring sort of piece of higher education. We do not think the best of our students. And assume the worst and we write policy to block the few, not lift up the many, might be a way to think about it. So I don't per se see that happening in any big change, but the idea of saying, can we talk more about faculty vulnerability? Can we talk more about elevating and lifting up students in this space? Can we capitalize on the parts where students have been going, I'm running my own panel and conference because there's stuff you need to know about how I'm going to be using this. And like, that's taken out of our hands. Like, thank you. I salute you. Students, continue as you were. Like, that's a beautiful thing to see. And if we can sort of take those pieces, but also use our, well, I've been looking across our reports for years, and this has been a place where students have consistently struggled and they've been asking for these kinds of things. And so this seems like a great opportune moment for us to start to do this. Can we get some professional development funds? Can we get some support? Can we use this to leverage resources to help do the work in the professional development, in the instructional design, in the incentive structures that will help us deal with the constant shifting nature of what this will entail? Because trying to tackle just what's happening in front of us now without saying, how are we making people better, smarter, faster teachers and staff that have the supports and resources to be there in the ways that they want for themselves and students, we won't be unable to catch up. We will not be able to stay up to paces, and we won't be able to write policies that do. So I don't know if that answers your question or is more of a inspirational speech to our assessment colleagues to like charge up hills. But yeah, we should charge up hills.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you for that. We have a couple hands raised.
Thank you.
Let's start with Connor.
Constance Connor, City College of San Francisco, long-term computer science instructor there. And I just wanted to share an interesting thing that happened to me yesterday. We have a pre-computer science 1 intro class, but they do some programming in this language called Python. So I gave them a prompt to put into ChatGPT, and because we have a section on AI, and it generates code, and depending a little bit about how you phrase the prompt, the code for a tic-tac-toe game can work, and then they have to run the code or not. But what I thought you might find interesting was that the code, and I purposely picked a problem that the code would generate would be more advanced than topics they see in the course. And I tell them, it's okay, maybe you don't understand everything in the code. But the last thing I have as part of a reflection is, do you think it would be better, basically something, I'm paraphrasing, if you learned more about computer science, more about programming? And 20% of my students, 100 students, said no. We're just going to, ChatGPT is just going to write out our code. And so I just wanted to share that. Very interesting, because they couldn't understand the code that ChatGPT created, but yet they didn't think going forward it was worth learning more programming. Of course, my response to them was, well, what if we were in a French class and the ChatGPT wrote this great French essay, but you couldn't understand what the essay was about because you don't speak French? So that was my response. But I just thought that was very interesting student view of the future. Thank you. It was a great presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Constance. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for sharing. One of the student panels that the Colorado College of Mines put on, one of the students was talking about how it actually motivated them for what they would be able to learn. Because they were like, the stuff that came out, they're like, I can't figure out how to cipher if this makes sense or if it doesn't, or if this is of any value. Like my evaluative judgment on this is incredibly limited based on what I know now. And the faculty member was like, oh, I could tell like that, right? Because it's expert versus novice kind of decision making. And they were like, wow, you could do that. Like, I'm going to get to a place where I can filter it and then it becomes helpful to me in that way. Like, that's pretty sweet. I'm getting motivated about it. And so it's just, I think it's fascinating how students are responding, the variety of responses, and sort of where that will go. So I hope the student voice piece continues to be a major part of our conversations.
Thank you. Let's go with Alex. John.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I want to chime in, similar to what Constance was saying. Great presentation, loved it. Do you or your colleagues know or have done any research, or are there any conversations about like AI generated video content? So for context, I teach communication studies, so I teach like public speaking and presentation skills, but I also teach media. And one of the things like I'm sort of teaching my students right now is, oh, here on Canva, you can literally like use Hey Gen AI, and you can essentially like make deep fakes of yourself, or you can at least you can use something like Hey Gen AI to generate like to train the model, so that way you can make just like video presentations of yourself really quickly, and you don't have to actually like build those skills. So based on that, my question for you is, what considerations or conversations have been had about AI and how it relates to the creation and implementation of video content?
Great question. And people, please feel free to add into the chat your experiences and others. This is group dialogue, even though I'm going to keep being like, oh, this is great, and I'm just going to interrupt people. So apologies in advance. Love that. There have been some, I will say the writing piece is so loud, like so loud in the conversation, but copyright, huge part of conversations, particularly around artists and artistic expressions, whether that's AI generated art, drawings, whatever that might be, audio, visual, all of that, horrible regulations on like deep fakes and those kinds of things related to it. So this is where our librarians and our copyright people were like, hello, come join us in our conversations here on Spaces. The Stanford, early on, one of the resources that I had in the slides, and I will throw the link to the slides back in chat in case anybody came in late, they're tracking progress on a variety of different tools that are video, audio related, and sort of where is that going? What is happening with that? What are those tools and what are the impacts of it? Really important too for our soon to graduate students in some of these industry areas and what is happening in those industry spaces. So I would say take a look at some of those repositories of the spaces, but I'm also happy to add some more resources to it in these slides. But yes, lots of stuff.
Thank you so much. I encourage you to raise your hand if you have any questions. Let's go with next. Pedro. Go ahead and mute
Hi,
yourself.
everybody. I'm Pedro. I teach in a veterinary school in Southern California. Thank you, Natasha, for this excellent presentation. My question to the group, I come from the perspective of reasoning and clinical reasoning. So I've been itching myself to test GPT in assess short essays related to reasoning and clinical reasoning. My question for the group is, what are the ethical considerations of using AI to grade them for assessment? Because as Natasha put it really well, great to filter information. And if you provide a really well-written rubric, it will do amazing in interpreting the text and the underlying thought process. However, using that for grading students when I'm dealing with classes of over 100, it's very challenging. So educational literature says that short essays are much better in assess clinical reasoning than multiple choice questions. We are stuck in multiple choice questions because of the sheer volume of work for the faculty. So this seems to be like a low-hanging fruit, but I haven't started because I struggle with the ethical considerations of having the AI analyzing clinical reasoning and what that affects with the safety of the population when they are being these students will be the doctors or the veterinarians in the field.
No, great. I will say there are some tools that are designed to provide that kind of feedback. Like that's what they are in those educational technology spaces, and they are very helpful. I would say same rules apply. Transparency, tell the students you're going to do it. And then give them a mechanism but you're like, look, there's a bunch of you. I want to give you feedback right away. Don't you want some feedback right away? And if we've done our training around those prompts and how to like tweak it in those ways where we can get really great things, then that's very helpful. The second piece of that, though, in addition to telling them, is give them a way to bring it back to you if it doesn't make sense. And so one of the things that I've been seeing in that space is I get the AI generated feedback and I look at it, and if I'm like, I don't agree with this, my second step is to pass it to a peer and explain my reasoning to a peer. So you're actually using student-to-student peer assessment, which is a great pedagogical exercise and a reinforcement of evaluative judgment and critical reasoning. And so they have the conversation on like, I don't know if I agree with this. It seems a little wonky. Like, what are you thinking? And I thought this. If that doesn't resolve it, then it comes to you. But part of the end of the course is they would collect information on how many times the students have to go to that peer. Because sometimes if they're going to the peer, you're not hearing or seeing that. So you want to gather like, did everybody have to go to a peer? And so first round of feedback was not any good on these spaces. And then how many came to you and how does that inform tweaking the responses? But so as long as they know about it and they have a mechanism by which to say, maybe no, and work that through, and that mechanism can then come to you at some point and you're tracking it to refine. I have not seen things that are really pushing back in an ethical space for that, nor on the students being like, what? Not cool side of things. Again, depending on what you're using, privacy important. So what you're putting in, if there's identifying information on the students, if there's patient information, like, you know, all the things around that. But for those that might not be like, this is great, you're just going to dump a bunch of stuff in, be thoughtful and smart about how you're using these things and what you're putting into it. But yes, I think you can definitely do it in ways that are productive and good for everybody involved.
Wonderful answers, Natasha. Using my peer, Amanda, get ready. I'm going to be using you a lot. So, Glenn Phillips, you're next.
Oh, great. Thanks. First, hi. Second, I have two really quick questions. The first question is regarding some stuff in chat about accreditation. Do you think that as more people use ChatGPT or similar tools for accreditation, that accrediting bodies will start creating, similar to classroom instructors, different rules and regulations to limit the ways that they can use them if they can identify them? And then the second question is somewhat related, which is, as Microsoft and all of these other areas are developing ChatGPT or similar AI instruments within, do you think that it's a responsibility for LMSs, for other technology tools, higher ed tools, assessment tools, course evaluation tools, faculty credentialing tools to also bring in AI as part of their suite?
Yes. Hi, Glenn. It's so nice to see you. And thank you for your lovely questions. It's nice to see all of you, but I have not seen Glenn in a while. And I saw a photo of Glenn at an event I could not go to, and I was sad. So I'm very excited about this at the moment. Apologies. So on the accreditation question first, I would say it's going to take an incident for guidance to come out on the accreditation side of things. That would be that's where if I had a crystal ball, what would I look in? And if there's any accreditors on here, they're like, well, you got to be like that, Tasha. But I will say this. I think there's an opportunity to do some kinds of pilots on, can you actually get better consistency in peer reviewer feedback in the use of AI on some of the places where we've had some historic challenges? I don't know. Could be interesting. Might be worth a grant. That's not for me, that's for the accreditors, but just throw that out there and then walk away from it. But I do think we can't tell, particularly when you look across, and when we were doing analysis of like accreditation reports, there is no voice. Like rarely is there any voice. A lot of it is a dump of information, and particularly some of the standards that are like, where does this live on your website and how many of these do you have? Like, you could put that information in, or you just pull it from the website and like pull that together, and then you're just like proof checking it in a committee and those kinds of things. Like the process of putting those different parts together could be hugely streamlined in some ways, or to search and find additional pieces of evidence that maybe I forgot about or didn't think about, or we didn't have a person on a committee to cite as support. So on our end, I think there are ways that we can use this to really help us and our time put things together. On the accreditor side of things, I think there's an opportunity space to address some of our sort of interesting pieces, but that's a conversation I'll pick up at another time. But I doubt guidance will come out at this point. I haven't heard anything about it. I haven't seen any types of pieces on it. And because no one's talking about it or talking about like, hey, we were thinking about trying or doing this, I also don't see anything popping in any kinds of way. So I think it's going to have to be an incident of a problem before something happens there. But it is how it is on that one. The second question you had was on the LMSs and that kind of thing. And yes, 100%. So most of these pieces, there's like on that 280 thing where they're cataloging, some of those things are built in, some of them are not. But I think the more that we can push, and this is a consistent assessment piece across the board, ask for more things in the technology you purchase. All right. Be prescriptive in what you want tech companies to do. We are incredibly like, oh my gosh, thank you for giving me this tool that I am paying you for. Like, no, stop it. Make demands. Like, you are a consumer. Ask for the things in it. If there's standards you want it to align for, request it. If there's things that you want it to be embedded in there, ask for it. We will drive that, but it will only happen if we're making those requests and if we're saying that this is what we need to be cutting edge in our field and in our discipline and do it. So I would say I do think it's going to happen, but it's partially on us to start making those demands, talk about what we need, and stop adapting our assessment processes and practices to the existing technology and start telling the technology folks what we need it to do. That's the second soapbox of mine. So thank you for bringing that up on that piece. And yeah, and be insistent and push on it. And then tell people, put in listservs. We'll be like, yeah, you know how many people love to like sign on to a letter, like an internet letter, like pass it around a listserv and have people sign on and be like, I have 300 institutions that feel this way about it. They're like, what? Okay, use the power of the group. We are all in this together. I know you might feel alone in those that have small offices, but use your community to help advance change, which is the second. How many? I have lots of soapboxes. That's a third soapbox. I was like, use your community to advance change. But thank you. Great questions.
Wonderful questions. Wonderful questions. Keep it going. Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Soy, you're next.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for this fantastic presentation. I've loved hearing not only the information you're sharing, but also your heart towards serving each other and serving our students well. Is just so valuable. Pedro's very thoughtful question about saving instructor time with giving feedback made me think about how I would feel as a student. So I, in graduate school, learned that the most valuable thing our professors can give us is individualized, valuable feedback, not just this is good, not just this is bad, not even a score, but this is what's working, this is what's not working. And having done my graduate work during the pandemic, I also watched my professors feel extremely burnt out all the time and really start talking about that emotional labor behind assessment. And then I started giving feedback and it was just a poop show. So I was just kind of thinking about this idea that if I were the student receiving AI generated feedback and I knew that it was leveraged to give me more time with that professor to receive that invaluable, golden, individualized feedback, I would love it. I also think about professors that I already know who outsource their grading to undergraduate students. Some universities do that, and I know the feeling of feeling offended, like, okay, so do you not even want to, why teach a class if you don't want to be connected to your students? So I do think that there are these two huge bridges. So yeah, I just wanted to share that and maybe see what you thought about that, or kind of that bridge.
No, that's a great point, Zoe. And I think part of what this doesn't, and Pedro, tell me if I'm misinterpreting some of your thinking. There are times where our attention is better spent as faculty on certain types of feedback than others. And so having a choice on where do I want to spend my time in the feedback is huge. Because right now, if it's like, there is no choice, I gotta give all of it. And so you just won't get feedback like on certain things because I have to choose. I need to grade this, I need to do it. And so you'll get feedback like, do better. No, just kidding. Actually, that was a feedback I saw in something where someone was like, their feedback from faculty members was just like, do better. I was like, I don't know what I would do with that either. I would give it back to them and be like, no, I think this was meant for you. Not to be salty. But don't say that. But I think having the option to say, this is a low stakes assignment that's formative in its nature, that you need some quick turnaround because it's going to influence the next task that you're going to be doing. Great opportune space to say, hey, I'm going to use this for that. So you're getting this and you're moving and you're doing that. Because then when you get to some other piece that really needs that individualized, I need to have a conversation with you, or we need to sit down, like, my time is now available to that. I have choice in how I'm thinking about those spaces. And I can choose which types of tasks this makes the most sense for. There are some tasks right now that I would say you're not going to get good feedback for. You cannot put in a prompt at this point that will get you the type of feedback that you want for what you're doing. And so some of it could be like, well, this test doesn't work, but this one does. And in those large courses, particularly intro courses, where a lot of concepts are new and you're saying the same feedback over and over and over again. Incredibly helpful saver of time to then be able to say, I'm seeing a trend across here that I need to talk about the next time we get together in this feedback, because I can also now ask for some data visualizations of the feedback patterns that have been happening, and that informs my teaching. So I can be more responsive to you in real time in our next meeting. And so I would say it's not a replacement, it's a choice in how I'm spending my time and where our feedback's happening, and not all tasks are going to be amenable to that. But and not all will be well prompted. But I think it is a good professional development space to say, like, how do you make those choices and how do you craft those prompts to really get that kind of stuff. But yeah, all of these are great and fabulous. Thank you all for your wonderful questions. Pedro, I don't know if that was like giving you justice for what you were.
No, I love the discussion on that. I think what we struggle with, that we want to provide meaningful feedback to the student, but the same feedback for students that are learning to become veterinarians applies to multiple students. So I see myself just typing the same topic over and over, like, yeah, please look on this, think about that. And I feel that that part could be automated, but I love the discussion about bring it back. I think if I were to implement something like this, I implement now, reflect on what the automatic feedback that I receive from the AI, and let me know if you agree or not, and why do you think it could be not implemented. I like that other level of thinking process for the students.
Thank you. At this time, Amanda, do we have any questions on the palette?
Yeah, we have a couple. There's one that since I'm reading it, I'm selfishly going to ask it because there's a lot, but I like this one. Collaborative learning. How might ChatGPT be used to foster collaborative learning by facilitating group discussions, debates, or peer assessments in an online or hybrid learning environment?
100%. I love that question. I love all of these questions. You guys are rocking it in the question department. So gold stars all around. One of the things that we know from students about any kind of collaborative learning or group work is they hate just being put in groups to work as a group. Part of the thing that's difficult about that is we don't really have structure, content, time, particularly in online environments, to teach them how to work in teams, how to work in groups. So if you want to support collaborative learning, one of the things that you could do is in your first meeting, go to ChatGPT and put in what are the most like normed, this is a horrible prompt, don't use this prompt, but basically asking about like what should be our group team values that we want to follow together to do good work. It puts some ideas down. You're like, great, which of these do we like? We like this, this, and this. These are going to guide how we work together. Okay, next question. What should be our most effective communication processes for teams to function well? Okay, it gives you some ideas. You know, you're like, well, we like this, 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 and let's do that one. So you could actually use it at the on front of collaborative work to help set norms of the things that we don't normally have time or create space for to teach about how to work in teams effectively, or how to assign roles, or how to deal with conflict. You could put those in as prompts, get ideas, and spend one of your first meetings coming up with what are your norms, how do you address conflict, who's going to do what, how are you going to talk to each other, and you put that in to set up success on collaborative learning on the other side of things. That's a huge time saver for things. And then if you're like, well, this worked, and then before in this group, but how do I want to change it for this other one? I now have a baseline from which to move and start to shift. But often we're like, just get in a group and do the work as groups, and then I will assess that was group work. And you're like, but there's learning outcomes that we want to see related to that and what that means and looks like, but we don't normally kind of build that in a lot of our tasks. So I think there's a huge opportunity for it to help our students on that collaborative learning and set that collaborative learning up for success online. And what does like good online communication with each other look like? And what is a reasonable amount of time in an online course to expect a response from my teammate? Like all of these things that end up being like struggles later, hugely beneficial. I will say, if you're doing anything with that, another great question to ask students at the end as they reflect on their group work time is students have no problem being like, Natasha didn't do anything. I had to do all of her work. She didn't show up to any meetings. And like, it was exhausting. They don't talk about how they contributed to that or how they hindered the group's advancing either. And so asking two reflective questions on like, how did I help create the situation in our group? And in what ways did I hinder or advance the functioning of this group are really helpful reflective questions to be like, wait a minute, I let Natasha do that, or I didn't do anything along the way or put these barriers in place, or maybe I did and it wasn't effective and I learned from that, or whatever that might be. So asking some reflective questions too, to that can also help reinforce the collaborative learning online. But I think on the front end, using it to set some norms for success, very, very cool.
Thanks. The next one is, again, a little selfishly, since I work on PD in our own classroom or on our own school, but we see in these SLO talks, and all of us have seen in the conversations, that there is a wide spectrum of how faculty administrators feel about ChatGPT. So the next question is, what training and professional development opportunities should be provided to faculty, and I'm going to add administrators to the question, to effectively integrate AI into their assessment practices, or even just start the conversation if you wanted to expand that out?
Yeah, so some of this will be the things that we always have to do in assessment, which is know your culture, know how to like start a conversation over here that ends up where you wanted it to go. So you don't start sometimes talking about ChatGPT, but you know that's where you want this to get. So you need to think about sneaky professional development into moving conversations. But I would also say this is a great place where you can use ChatGPT to develop some slides for you, like, what are the 5 most common complaints about faculty on ChatGPT? And like, what are the 5 areas that administrators really need to know about this topic? On a slide, put this together, and then say things like, hey, if I'm looking at my assessment process and I'm thinking about this, I want to make sure we're being proactive about our role that generative AI is playing in there, maybe related to academic integrity or not. Here are areas that we're seeing, across the board as places that might be developing. Which of these are priorities? And if you have something like a strategic plan, if you have anything like a, any kind of like ongoing initiatives that you can connect it to, like this aligns with item 2 and 3 of our strategic plan to like enhance student sense of belonging and increase faculty, whatever, tie it to whatever institutional initiative you can, or whatever sort of priority piece that you can do the awesome legwork and mind work to make that happen, to then say, here's the space that we need to do it. Depending on your culture and context will depend on where you're going to start in that professional development journey. Some of it might just even be, here's what it is, and no, not all of our students are using it. Like that could be sort of ground level 1, right? Where there's some people that are like, they're using it on everything all the time. And you're like, some of your students have not even heard of it, don't even know it's an option to them, and aren't even thinking about it in any way. So it could be just basic developing. And the second could be getting into some of those principles that set you up for generative AI success, building it in, like, how are we being transparent? How are we using our students? Like, how in these roles, how are we doing these other pieces? And that's the focus of professional development that then gets to like, oh my gosh, well, we're already really in a good position to handle all this now that is coming. Or third piece, start with the professions or disciplines that it's most likely a piece of, or most likely to have, and try to provide ways to help them shift that conversation. So it's not just like academic integrity at the sake of students like well-being, because that is where we go. That's like our starting point. And so I don't know if that really helps, or think about the path that you want to take and where might be good starting points and where the knowledge level is, and what's happening at your institution that you can connect it to help elevate and advance your work. So that's like a non-answer answer.
No, I think it's good. It helps lay out a good plan. Sometimes on campuses, when we're talking about things that are shaking the entire foundation of the world as we know it, it's that we need to eat the elephant one bite at a time, but it's hard to figure out where to start, the trunk or the toes. So I appreciate the systematic prompt to think through. Okay, just here are some places to start that. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, I would say think about this as an arc, right? Like most of this is not a one-off professional development thing. Think about what is just like we need a scaffold learning for our students, we need a scaffold learning for our administration, faculty, and staff, and we need to stay on it, because they'll slip at different points of time. We got to be like, remember, we learned that over here and we can transfer it over here. Like we have to help them and do that with them. And so we need to build it in that way. And also remember, when you're talking about the elephant, there's this comic that I love that's an elephant and he's laying in like the therapy bench, right? And and he's saying to this therapist who's taking very thorough notes, like sometimes when I'm in the middle of the room, they still don't talk about me. And so I would also say there are some things that are institutions that we're like, oh, I wish we could talk about this, but we can't. And we got to back into it in other ways. And I think we've been doing a lot of that backing in through assignment design conversations, like an assignment that's just not quite doing what you want it to do. And let's go from there with it, which is a great way into like, is it equitable? Does the prompt make sense? Like, how are we setting ourselves up for this? And so it's not like, come generative AI, proof your assignment. It's like, hey, this isn't quite working. Pick something you're doing this semester that's going to help you right away. And let's get together and do it. And then from there, you're like, there's an elephant. He's a part of our family too. Like, yeah.
I love the I don't know if it's a metaphor or analogy of backing into the conversation. I think that's such an eloquent way to put it, instead of manipulating the conversation, which sometimes I think of it in my head, but it's really just it's backing into it is a much more pleasant way to think of it.
That's good.
Enrique, were there any more questions in the chat that you saw, or anybody have any? Or our hands are kind of quiet. There's
Yeah.
others in the
Sorry.
sorry.
I saw the one about accessibility. Did we touch on that one?
No,
I don't know if we got, yeah, about whether the output would be accessible. Somebody had a great question. If that person was to unmute and ask it more eloquently, I just saw it earlier. I don't have it to read, but maybe that captures the gist of it. But like whether it needed to be the output from like ChatGPT, would it be needed to be translated into be accessible for, folks using different technologies?
My understanding is that most of these have been built in ways that are about enhancing accessibility. So you can actually put stuff in it and get things out of it that are more accessible. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Now, whether that is an accurate understanding, I don't know. But I think there's two of the places, the Department of Ed Tech, the Office of Ed Technology report that I mentioned has a whole section on that. That would be a good resource to go and take a look at and how they're planning it and what sort of guidelines or things they're putting around it. It's also part of that White House AI Bill of Rights piece. And there was some guidance on like what that means and what they'll look for in some spaces. And so I would say, well, my understanding is yes, for sure, it's a thing that will, if that is an incorrect understanding, it is definitely on the agenda of pieces that need to be addressed moving forward. So,
Thanks.
Natasha, one of the questions was, do we have any examples of institutional implementation, like a plan that comes from the institution?
Well, so there's a slide. Let me go find it real quick and I'll put it up for you guys. Yes and no. I will say that's most of my answers are like yes, but no, but so this slide that's in there has different guides related to things. Most of these are institutional. It's like here's our policy or here's our guidance related to it. I would say the Pod Network listserv, if you are not on it, you're welcome to join. Pod is the Centers for Teaching and Learning people. Come together. They share great resources. They even will share language that they had in emails that they sent out to faculty about things and like what their policies are and related to that. Some of the more like STEM focused schools that are dealing with this just across their institution because they're STEM focused have more advanced policy and I think guidance around it, but it's still, I don't know. I wouldn't say like this is a good example to point to, but I think some of these like things like here's a report from our committee and what we're thinking and what we want to move towards and what we're watching for and how we want to think about our work moving forward so we can remain adaptive as other thing goes. Those are good. The Colorado College for Minds is another one. And it's again, because most of their students, they have to figure that out. That's who they are. That's what their majors are. And so some of those places I think have good spaces. And Australia is like crushing it in what they're doing related to having resources and guidance and those kinds of things. In terms of, is there an institution that I'm like, what? That one? Not yet. But I'll keep an eye out and I'll let you know.
Thank you. I know we're City College is in the process of creating a resource handbook regarding AI. Yeah, and so it's coming down from the academic senate. I think they're leading the charge. So thank you.
Well, let me know. We'll add it to the slide. We'll take a take a look at it. I'll be like, is this any good? I gotta look through my. No, I'm just kidding. We'll add it as a resource.
Jarek, anything you want to add to the regarding the chat or?
We are fine. Looks like we've just again it seems like there's just so many issues that we've tackled. Natasha, what can I say? This is just I'm just grateful for your time. Unless there are any other questions, I think this would be a good time for us to pause and end. The resources are going to be available for everyone. I'm going to send them via the flyer. So if you're not on the listserv, please don't hesitate to send us an email, let us know. We do have Coach's blog that's also been posted here in the chat a number of times. What else is there? Yeah, that this will include the PowerPoint and recording and chat and everything else that we have exchanged. So we are good to go. Anybody, any final thoughts, questions, comments?
Nope, I just wanted to
great thank you.
to thank Natasha. Every time I hear you speak, I think of reading a good book and looking up and realizing it's midnight because you know, your presentation is just so rich full of information that an hour goes by and going, oh my goodness, that was an hour, but it was so good. So I always think when I get done hearing you talk of that metaphor that popped into my head the first time. So I just wanted to express our appreciation from Coaches for coming and spending a time with us, because you know, we wouldn't exist without volunteers like you to keep us going to speak.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you for having the space as coaches and providing this outlet for folks. It's incredibly needed and wonderfully appreciated. And thank you for all the great questions and ideas. I can't wait to catch up on the chat later when it comes out. But thank you so much for taking your time on Friday to talk about this with me.
Right on. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week. Thank you very much. Take care.
Everyone.
All righty, bye-bye.
Thank you, Jarek. Have a great
All right.
weekend.
Of course, take care. Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
Natasha.
All righty,
Thank
take
you,
care.
Enrique. I really appreciate you. You're so good at the question part. It was
Thank
really
you.
smooth. And
Yeah.
Michelle, so good
Thank
to
you.
see
Yes,
you.
good to see you too. Thanks so much, Natasha. Great to see
Always a
you.
pleasure. Always a
Yes.
pleasure. All right, take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Have a
Everybody,
great weekend.
bye.